Well, President Obama has vowed to protect privacy rights when it comes to the National Security Agency mining for data that could stop terrorists. It's an important task. The president says that no one in the government is intentionally abusing the system, but there are new revelations of privacy violations. And if Congress and the White House aren't enough, one senator is calling for the Supreme Court now to weigh in. Elizabeth Pran is live in Washington with more. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, Shannon. The National Security Agency defending its tactics this week as Americans learn it violated privacy rules on thousands of occasions. The infractions ranging from typing area code errors to intrusive access and storage to legally protected communications. While some were unintended, others showed breaches of standard procedures. This week, lawmakers discussed a failed amendment that may have fundamentally changed the way the agency could collect personal information. The bill's author, Representative Justin Amash, says it may be something on the table next session.
I'm hopeful that we'll have another opportunity. It might not be exactly the same amendment. This was an amendment to an appropriations bill, so it had to be written in a very particular way, and I'm hopeful we'll have a way to amend some kind of policy legislation in the future.
That being said, other lawmakers agree surveillance programs play a vital role in protecting Americans. Representative Peter King even crediting the agency with preventing a subway attack in New York City back in 2009. He, as well as other lawmakers, feel the problem lies not in the program, but the president's incompetence in explaining the role of complex metadata collection.
I fully disagree with what Senator Rand Paul said. That was just a grab bag of misinformation, distortion coming from him. The fact is, John, look at this. Take Rand Paul's own numbers. He said there's billions of phone calls being collected. It's not really true, but assume he's being right for once. Billions of phone calls being collected. You juxtapose that with 2,800 violations, which were self-reported by the NSA, which should not violate anyone's rights.
The White House reacting, saying in part, while the majority of the incidents were unintentional, the agency is monitoring and addressing compliance incidents. Shannon, back to you.
Elizabeth, thank you very much. All right, here now to talk about it, Republican Congressman Trent Franks and Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff. We're going to talk both NSA and the deteriorating situation in Egypt. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Congressman Schiff, I'll start with you and the NSA. Word that more than 2,700 security breaches, essentially privacy breaches, with respect to legally protected communications. They say it was inadvertent. Is that a good enough explanation for you?
Well, it's not a complete explanation. It is accurate to say that these are not intentional errors. Nonetheless, there is a great number of them, and this is just one quarter, so it's very concerning. And I think there are a number of forms that we ought to bring about. You mentioned at the top of the segment the metadata program. And I think with all of our programs in the intelligence area, we have to ask three questions. Is it constitutional? Is it effective? And is it structured in a way to minimize any intrusion on our privacy? And that metadata program, I don't think, is structured in a way to minimize an imposition on our privacy. That data could be held by the telecommunications provider. That would be much more respective of the privacy rights of the American people, and we could still get the information we need by going to them when we think a number is connected to a terrorist plot. So I think some of the programs need to be restructured, and I think we need more safeguards and transparency in the FISA court as well to deal with some of these problems.
And Congressman Franks, on the issue of transparency, according to the Washington Post, looking into these breaches, they say that they have documents showing that agency personnel at the NSA were actually told to remove details and substitute more generic language in reports to the Justice Department and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. What does that suggest to you, if anything?
Well, it suggests that we must hold all of those individuals acutely accountable, because the reality is we have a challenge balancing our need to be able to ascertain where and what terrorists are doing, while not at the same time doing something that would abrogate the constitutional rights of the American people. And there is a way to do both, but it means that we have to walk a fine line, and those people that are in charge of those processes must be held accountable to walk that fine line.
All right, I want to turn to the issue of Egypt as it continues to foment there today. There's been a lot of discussion about aid for Egypt, whether we turn this a coup or not, whether we take U.S. aid out of Egypt to the tune of $1.3 billion a year. I want to play a little bit of what Senator John McCain, Republican, had to say today. He has since changed his position from his initial vote to continue aid to now his position saying maybe it's time to not continue that aid. Here's what he said today.
We know that the administration called in the Egyptians and said, look, if you do a coup, we're going to cut off aid because that's the law. We have to comply with the law. And in this administration did not do that.
Congressman Schiff, what's your position now on whether we should continue to provide aid, whether it's financial or military or otherwise, to Egypt right now?
Well, I agree with Senator McCain. The law is quite clear. This was a coup. But even beyond that, the law says that if the military played a decisive role in toppling a democratically elected government, we have to cut off aid. So that clearly was met here. But I also think that if we don't cut off aid after this point, after all of this violence, we're basically sending a message to the Egyptian military. They can do whatever they want, and we're going to continue this spigot of military support. And I think that eliminates any leverage that we might have. We're probably not going to have much leverage in the near term, and certainly some of our other allies in the region, like the Saudi government, is providing a lot of billions, even if we cut off our aid. But nonetheless, I think it's important to establish our credibility with the Egyptian military, as well as other militaries around the world that may be looking at whether they can conduct a coup and maintain support from the United States. So I agree with the Senator. I think we need to cut off aid and help leverage that to reduce the violence and say, Egypt, you've got to put your country back on a democratic path if you want us to resume our support.
Congressman Franks, final word to you.
Well, I just would ask, where was the administration when they should have been asking these questions weeks and months and even several months ago when the Morsi regime was abrogating the constitutional rights of its citizens? That's when we had the leverage. That's when we had the challenge to do something about it. The sad part about it is that this administration's policies, whether foreign or domestic, have a way of disproportionately and falling heavy on victims. And this administration has been silent to the victims of the Muslim Brotherhood that is using these tragic days to use as an excuse to attack churches, to attack people on their based on their faith, to burn Coptic churches, to even go after orphanages and schools. And the deafening response of this administration lets those victims continue to languish. And I just have to say to you, we all understand the need to make sure that we have popular elected governments. But the history is replete with popular elected governments that created tremendous tragedy in this world. And this administration now is in the position of trying, it seems, to put back into power the Muslim Brotherhood, which they helped put in power in the first place in Egypt, which is the original tragedy that caused all of these things to occur in the first place.
Congressman Franks, Congressman Schiff, thank you both for your time today.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right, it's time for you to weigh in. We want to know what you think about our hot topic on the NSA. Does it matter to you whether the NSA security breaches were intentional or unintentional? Does the motivation matter? Tweet us your answers to @